Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Cowboy Survival. I'm Richard, and today we're going to talk about the use of motor oil, more specifically, used motor oil in a survival situation. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? When can it be used? When should it not be used? So let's just dive into the question of, is used motor oil a good resource in a survival situation? So I've recently seen some videos where people suggest that used motor oil is a great untapped resource in a survival situation. Let's talk about that for a minute. So in a normal situation, an emergency situation, used motor oil might be available if you tapped into people's cars, but we're talking about a situation where everything has gone down, the grid is down, you're isolated, you're on your own, it's absolute live or die kind of situation. Is the use of motor oil, more specifically used motor oil, a good resource? Well, let's think about why it would be a resource in the first place. Well, if you're looking at a situation where the grid is down, maybe thousands or millions of people have died, maybe it's a pandemic, maybe it's nuclear holocaust, maybe it's riots, I don't know what it is. But you've got to think about, you've got thousands of cars that are sitting idle. Maybe they don't work because of an electromagnetic pulse, something. And in each one of those cars is going to be 5 to 6, maybe 7 quarts if it's a truck, 7 quarts of used motor oil that can be drained. And you get that simply, you go under the car, you remove the plug that's in the oil pan, and that oil can drain out, and you can collect that motor oil. That motor oil will burn. Now I've got a situation here. Let's look at this, where I've got some just regular cotton cloth, and I try to light it. And what you can see is that cloth will light and it will burn, but not very intensely. Now, on the other hand, let's look at what happens if I take the same cloth, I dip it in motor oil, and then I light it. And now I want you to see how intensely that cloth burns once it gets lit. It takes a second to get it lit. It's not quite as easy as dry cloth is. But once you get that lit, you can see that it's going to burn really, really intensely. And that's going to create a great fire source. It's going to create heat. It's going to create a great fire starter. But is that a good idea? Well, let's talk about this for a little while. What are the normal uses for motor oil? Motor oil obviously is used in a vehicle to lubricate the engine, but over time that oil breaks down and you have to change it out. So you're going to get this dirty used motor oil. This oil is going to be flammable, but at the same time it's going to contain an awful lot of products that you may not want to be released into the environment, particularly not your immediate environment. Now, traditional uses of used motor oil would include things like oiling up maybe chains or tools. That's still a good idea, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. People also use motor oil around the base or underneath fences, around fence posts, to control weeds and to kill weeds. Now, it does work, but let's understand why it works to put used motor oil as a weed control. It's because it's got a lot of toxins and poisons in it, and it creates or prevents, weeds from growing wherever that oil has been spread in the ground. Now that oil, if it's consumed by animals, can kill the animals. That's not necessarily a good thing, right? As you see here, it is a lubricant. When I put it on my fingers, you can see that it does in fact create a slippery lubrication kind of situation. So it can be used for some kind of slight lubricant. A lot of people will take used motor oil and spread it over a chip and tar road to keep dust down, to keep the dust down from that road in dry circumstances. But when the road dries out and that oil is still there and the dust pops up, you're breathing in all that. Let's talk about some of the stuff that's in used motor oil for a moment. So some of the things that are in used motor oil include detergents, anti-wear agents, zinc, dialkyl, let's see if I can say this, dithiophosphates. Okay, say that 3 times, right? How about dispersants to keep the oil from coagulating? You've also got some antioxidants that are in there. In addition, you're going to have things like lead, cadmium, chromium, zinc, all byproducts of the fact that the oil has been heated, been circulating through the engine, and been collecting all these toxic items that are going to be in that oil. So when you burn that oil, it's going to put off smoke, and that smoke is something that you can breathe in. not necessarily a good idea. So I saw recently somebody had a small sawdust and used motor oil kind of small burner. So let's take a look at that. So I recently saw a video where somebody took a small canister like this, mixed sawdust, used motor oil, and some wax to create a little burner like this. And then they cooked over it. Now, my concern about that video is that the smoke and the contaminants that come up off of that are going to get into the food that you're cooking. And that's going to create a toxic edible situation. Now, these metals that I mentioned a moment ago, those metals accumulate in your body. And they don't wash out, they don't go out. So whether it's zinc or mercury or lead, that accumulates in your body over time and can create a situation where your body actually reacts negatively to that. There can be short-term response, but there can also be a serious long-term health issue that arises from using a stove like this that's using motor oil as something to help it burn. So let's talk about some ways that this used motor oil is bad in a survival situation. First of all, 1 gallon of this stuff can contaminate up to 1 million gallons of water. So if this stuff is dumped on the ground or dumped down a drain and gets into your drinking water, your well or your stream, the source that you're going to use for your long-term drinking water supply, that could be bad because it can contaminate that water and make that water really undrinkable and unsafe. You can't filter that stuff out once it's in your water. It's really bad stuff, and you really don't want to be consuming it because it can create all kinds of health problems for you. Second, you've got a situation where you can actually contaminate the ground where you're growing plants. If you throw this stuff out into dirt and that dirt is then used to grow plants, those plants that come out of that dirt can be really, really toxic. From an immediate health standpoint, this stuff can be really bad. First of all, if it gets on your skin, it can be toxic. If you read any container of motor oil, it says on here, and I'll read this to you, it says, keep out of the reach of children. It then says, warning, continuous contact with used motor oil has caused skin cancer in animal tests. Avoid prolonged contact. Wash skin with soap and water. So you really don't want to get this stuff on you. If you're going to handle it, you want to make sure and handle it with gloves. I think another point here is that if you burn this, you're going to inhale all those chemicals, all those metals, all those contaminants into your lungs, and it can do damage to your lungs. And that might be, in a survival situation, deadly. Remember, in a survival situation, it's very unlikely that you're going to have advanced health care access. It's unlikely that you're going to have advanced medications to help you to recover from contaminants such as this used motor oil. So that's going to make it a really bad situation. So you want to avoid anything. In fact, anything that could be poisonous or contamination of your food or your drinking water, you want to avoid it in a long-term survival situation. So one safe way to use this used motor oil is to get some on a rag, like I've done here, and then use it to lubricate your tools. In this case, this one's already rusty, but when you put this stuff on a tool like this, like a shovel or an axe or something, you're going to create a protective barrier on that tool that's going to help protect that tool from rust and protect that tool from breaking down. So that is one good use for used motor oil. Now, it is true that you can use used motor oil or waste motor oil as a source of fuel in certain kinds of heaters. Now, certain manufacturers make waste oil heaters. These are very special heaters and they're very specially designed. First thing they do is they preheat the waste oil in order to make it more usable for combustion purposes. Second, they have a lot of filters in them that filter out the dangerous chemicals and contaminants that are going to be put off as you burn this stuff. They're in a sealed burning compartment. Now, the third problem with these is that they are very expensive. I've seen some of them can be as low as $1,500, but I've also seen more advanced ones for larger areas that can cost up to $15,000. They're very specially made. They have to meet EPA requirements because burning this stuff can be very, very dangerous to your health. Now, I've also seen people use smudge pots. Again, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not something I would want to do because this stuff is going to be very, very contaminant heavy. It's going to have a lot of metals in it. It's going to have a lot of bad stuff in it that as you burn it, it's going to get into your lungs. It can get into your food if you're using it for cooking. And it's just not a good solution, I don't think, if you don't have the proper equipment to actually burn this stuff. Now, another good use for this stuff might be if you have doors or hinges that need to be oiled. Something that's not going to be mechanical, something that's not going to be heated up, but to use it to lubricate surfaces that might be squeaky or might need lubrication, like I said, like hinges or doors. You can also use waste oil as a way to treat lumber that's going to be outside. So if you're going to build a barn or something like that and you need to treat the wood to keep it from rotting, you need to put wood in the ground, maybe a post, and you want to treat it first by soaking it in used oil. That's a good use. But again, you've got the issue that once you put it in the ground, it's going to be contaminated. That ground is not going to be good for growing anything, and it will be toxic if you touch it or get it all over you. So you want to make sure and use gloves, and you want to make sure that that ground is not ground where you're going to be growing any food. So what are the legal requirements surrounding waste oil today? Well, first of all, the EPA does control how you use or dispose of oil, whether it's waste oil or any kind of oil. These kind of items are toxic and dangerous. And Part 40 of actually it's Title 40 of Part 79 of the Federal Code of Regulations will tell you that you must store waste oil in a container that will not degrade. You must dispose of it only in a waste disposal site and only at a waste recycling site, not dumped on the ground. Now, your state may have more stringent requirements than even you are aware of from the federal government. For example, in my state, I cannot dispose of it by pouring it on the ground. I cannot use it on a fence line to control weeds. I cannot use it on a road to keep dust down, to spread it over the road. I cannot burn it, okay? These are things I cannot do. So what's the final word on the use of waste oil in a survival situation? Well, first of all, let's remember it is toxic. I don't want to dump this stuff anywhere where it's going to get into my water source or into my food source. I don't want to put it in a garden. I don't want to put it in a pond. I don't want to dump it anywhere where it's going to leak into my well water. That would be really bad because I would consume it. I don't want to burn this stuff because if I burn it, I'm going to breathe in the air, and there's lots of toxic chemicals and heavy metals that are in this stuff that when it gets into the smoke and I breathe it in, it can cause serious health problems with me. And remember, in a long-term survival situation, I'm not going to have good access to health care or emergency health remedies. Hey, look, if you liked the video today, I'd like you to click that like button below. And also make comments. What do you think about the use of used waste oil for survival purposes, particularly long-term survival purposes? I'm not sure it's a great idea. I think there are some limited situations where you might be able to use it. I think you could use it in an emergency situation to help you start a fire. I think you could use it to sort of put on your tools, your implements, maybe your axe, your pickaxe, your adze, your maul, your sledgehammer, your shovel, those kind of things to help protect them from rust. Perhaps on a saw blade or an axe blade as well. I think you can also use this in an emergency situation to put on a wood that you might use to put in the ground as a post. You could use this on hinges or other moving metal parts that you don't want to rust and you want to keep them movable, maybe on a bolt or a screw to keep it from rusting closed. I think that could be a good use of this stuff. But otherwise, I'm not sure it's a great use of things. So let me hear your comments. Look, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. Click that subscription button below. Make sure and click the notification bell so you're made aware the next time we put a video out. In the meantime, stay strong, stay prepared, and have a blessed day. We'll see you real soon, right back here on Cowboy Survival.